Hi, I'm Chantal, and I'm learning how to be a potter. Started about a year ago, finding some fun vintage molds on Facebook, and it just kind of grew from there. So join along with me as I take this pottery from a little hobby to hopefully a thriving ceramics business. Hey y'all, we're gonna make this rad red mushroom clock from this vintage mold, and let me tell you, this thing was dirty. Let's talk about the dead spiders that were in there. I mean, it was something else, and all that dust. I wore a little face mask just because it was so dusty, I kid you not. And some of these vintage molds, they come really dirty, but this one was just particularly so. But you see, once I brushed it off, it was totally clean on the inside. There were no cracks or old clay or anything like that. So I poured up some beautiful slip, and as you can see in this clip, that slip is really thin. If you remember my donut bowl video, it was like super duper thick. Don't worry, I fixed it sometimes. But in the meantime, I did let this sit up, like, not just like overnight. Of course, I only waited like 20 minutes before I poured the slip out, but then I let it sit up overnight in the mold, and I don't know what I was thinking, not cutting out the back. I thought for some reason that was a smart idea, but it was really dumb, and you can see later where after I mashed on the back of that, it actually cracked later. But in the end, it's not going to matter. So initially, I didn't even bisque fire this, y'all. I decided to just paint on the greenware, which is fine. You can totally do that. You just paint your underglaze or your glaze right onto the greenware. It's not going to hurt anything, but it is going to let your cracks be exposed only at glaze fire, not before. So you learn lessons as you go if you do the bisque fire about the structural integrity of the piece, but what do I know? I'm just learning, right? So I went in with a homemade underglaze color here. I mean, not homemade, I just mixed up some brown and some white and a little bit of yellow to try to make the pretty gills of the mushroom not exactly white, but also not super not white, right? I wanted it to be a nice cream colored, if that makes sense. It turned out pretty good, but I'm not entirely certain that it's not just the color of the clay whenever it's fired under the clear glaze that I have. And then I went in with the body with this. It appears to be a beautiful pink, and I'll be honest, I may end up making a pink mushroom clock for myself, but this was intended to be a gift for a friend, and she said she would love it if it was like Alice in Wonderland-ish. So I was like, okay, Fire Engine Red then. Fire Engine Red, that seems very Alice in Wonderland-y, you know, good, strong color. But as you can see, it kind of goes on in this lighter pink, and it just made me really, really want it to be pink. And then whenever it dries, I tell you what, it's an even paler pink, which is so nice. Such a beautiful color. Now, as I'm going in, you can see I'm like switching between different paint brushes. So like, I'll use the fan brush for those larger areas because I'm just trying to get enough glaze on there that I don't have to do 945 coats. I would like to just do 3. But in the more detail-y area, I'll switch to a detail brush, and so that's why you can see me kind of, sometimes I'll go in and try to do little details with the fan brush, but it's not that easy to do with the fan brush. It's a little difficult. And especially because I didn't want to do over the numbers. And we've had this conversation before, I believe, when we were talking about the donut bowls. I wanted the numbers to be white, so doing them all in red would maybe end up with the white not coming off quite as well, and I actually ended up making a mistake later, and I got red all over the number. I mean, it was like a whole thing. So long story short, I could have been more careful around the numbers, but I was really enjoying myself with this fan brush and the detail brush. I'll get in there in a minute with it and go to town as well. But when you're doing 3 coats of this really thick gloppy underglaze, I mean, and I say gloppy, it's thicker than acrylic paint, but not as thick as like oil paints. So it's not an unpleasant thing, but it's not a real paint. It's like clay. It's almost like painting with slip that's a little too loose, if that makes any sense. Another thing that I really wish I had thought about was this green here. This green looks absolutely stinking gorgeous whenever it's wet, and it looks really, really dark whenever it is fired. So I wish that I had done some test tiles beforehand, but of course, even when you do test tiles, sometimes the colors come out different, and I'm not certain that I could make the colors that I want beforehand. So that's something I'm really having to learn to let go of with ceramics, is you're not gonna know what it looks like until you're done sometimes. Maybe eventually one day I will be able to say that with confidence, that something's going to look exactly but I just don't think that's realistic with ceramics. There's too much going on, the heat is too much, and it's going to react differently depending on where you put the piece in the kiln, how many coats you did, what you mixed in, because I did not actually use, for example, on this leaf that I'm painting right here, I did not use straight green out of the bottle. I mixed it with a little bit of the lighter green that I have to really try to lighten it a little bit and brighten it, but I don't think I did enough, because it turns out very, very dark at the end of the day, and I don't think I really wanted it to be that dark, but that's okay, it's cool. Let's talk about some other mistakes that I made. I'm so learning so much about this, you guys. So basically, the clock, it dawned on me later, I should have underglazed the entire thing, including the back. Like, I just did what I could see, which is fine. But if I was going to make this not like for a friend, and not just because I was trying out one of my fun new vintage molds, I really think that I should have underglazed the whole back. What do you think? If you have an opinion, will you leave me a comment? Because I'm going to be making a few more of these, and you'll see why at the end of this video. Not only is this such a cool mold, and like everyone in my family wants one now, but also I want one. This was supposed to be a gift for a friend, but now I want one. I think it's so cool. So anyway, I don't know. Should we underglaze the back or not? It's kind of a toss-up. We don't want to glaze the back, because then where would we stand it up in the kiln and all that? But we could underglaze the back. Underglaze the back, and then it can still sit in the kiln, because the underglaze doesn't stick to the kiln shelves in the way that a glaze does. So that underglaze element makes it a different chemical reaction in that heat. So you can do that on the back, and then that would make it like a consistent color on the back and on the sides too. I don't know, it's worth thinking about. Really enjoyed painting this. This was a really fun experience. It's a mold that was made, I think, in the 70s, and I haven't looked at the mold specifically to get the date on it, but you can tell this is a real craftsman made this. That there are no undercuts. It's not hard to get out of the mold. It's very detailed. I mean, those gills are absolutely beautiful in person, because they're each deep, and so you know that you're not going to lose any of that detail in the glazing. And there's little elements to it that just totally make sense. Like this grass, for instance, that was not necessary. It was absolutely not necessary. But the craftsman went in and did the original sculpture to do the mold with that grass, and it just makes it look so beautiful, that little extra touch. And speaking of extra touches, as I was painting this, I was trying to decide if those are strawberry leaves, and if they are, maybe I need to do a strawberry mushroom clock. So add some strawberries to it. I have a little mold with little strawberries, or I could just hand sculpt them and stick on there. I don't know, that seems like it could be really fun. Again, I'm gonna be making more of these clocks, so why not? So I did the final coat on the main body of the mushroom top, the mushroom hat, the mushroom head. I don't know, but I made sure to go around and do the edges really well too with my finer, more detailed brush, because I just want to make sure I don't accidentally underglaze them, not put enough coats on that edge, and then the edge looks all fuzzy and not crisp. So just going back in there and taking my time to do that, I think makes a lot of difference in the final product, especially when you see it up close. It's one thing when you're standing pretty far away, but when you get up close, you can really see how those gills actually have little humps, little bumps, where they attach to the red part. So you want to make that a nice crisp line so that it looks sharp. And then of course, when I got the edging done there, I didn't really have any excuse not to just move on. So obviously, I did another coat and then started doing the numbers. So just going in with that white underglaze on top, and this is a china white, so it's pretty close to a pure white. It's got a little bit of a yellow in it, but it's not that I've added, but there is a little bit of a yellow tinge to it. If you're not, if you're looking for that, it's not a super bright white, but you get enough coats on there after it's fired. It's a pretty bright white, so it looks really nice. The one regret I have is that I feel like I should have done a fourth coat instead of just doing 3, because the white going over the little bits where I made mess with the red, really it could have used an extra coat, but it looked so good on each one of them that I thought I had done good enough. But you live and you learn, right? Speaking of living and learning, this is where I realized that I should have been a little bit more intentional with the painting on these numbers without the red underneath, because it really did not help figuring out where the edges of the numbers are, right? So you're just trying to do that top, but it's not a sharp edge. I know it looks kind of sharp in the shots, but it's really not. It's rounded over. So if I had painted with the red and then come back and painted with the white and not done red everywhere and then white on top, then that edge could have been a little bit more clean. And it just didn't even dawn on me. I was being careful, but it didn't occur to me why. And that's why. It's to make those edges nice and crisp and make it not fade to red on the outside edge of every number, because that's what I felt like it looked like in the end. But I mean, it's not terrible. It's not terrible, especially not for my first time ever painting it, right? Am I right? Speaking of, I got done painting the numbers, did my 3 coats, let it dry completely, and then it was time to ruin the whole thing by covering it in the clear glaze. Now normally I would dip, but I didn't want to get the clear glaze on the back because it's a huge surface and that would have been a lot of clear glaze wasted. So I decided to go with a brush on clear. The thing with the brush on clear, it takes 3 coats, just like everything else. And it's a very thick, you gotta go back and dippy dip, and it covers up everything, and you feel like you have just ruined your piece and everything is horrible and no good, very bad project. However, you will fire it and it will look good in the end, hopefully. Just write it out with me. As I'm putting on this final coat of the clear, this is when I realized that I didn't feel like it was finished, right? So I decided to pour up this teeny tiny little mold that I have, and it's so tiny, and you probably don't even notice it on the finished product because it's such a small element, but to me, those little tiny details are what make everything fun. So I'm here, I'm planning my thing, and I poured it up off camera, obviously, couldn't remember to turn the camera on, but here I am painting this teeny tiny snail. You see it? It's so little. It's like the size of my thumbnail. And I'm using a little bit of a brown underglaze that I had mixed up with a little bit of a oatmeal color underglaze that we got. And I'm just kind of trying to blend it on that shell and then his little body and get it all good and covered, because I'm not sure how much of it you'll actually see once I get it settled into the clock where I'm planning to put it. But I want to make sure that just in case you don't see something that is just terribly messy on the back side, just out of the corner if you go. So I just decided the whole thing needed to be painted, okay, you guys? The whole thing just had to be painted. And so I go back and forth a couple of times, make sure I do my 3 coats, but I also, I'm watering down each coat a little bit so that I pick up some of the little finer details, if that makes sense. So it's almost like a wash going in there to get those finer details. Now he does have a little smile, which is a little bit weird, but I'm okay with it. I mean, you know, it could be wiped off during the cleaning process, but I chose not to. So just, you know, he's a little bit of a weird snail. Turns out, at the end of the day, it's not going to matter, but we'll get there. So we're going to affix him to the clock using the clear glaze. So once he was dried out, I coated him in the clear glaze, I re-wet the area where he's going to go, and then I just kind of stuck him on there. And the glaze, whenever it's heating in the kiln, will actually join together the 2 pieces. And this is what dawned on me I should do with those silly donut rolls too. So making sure he's good and settled in there with touching areas, and then it was done. Came out of the kiln, I put the mechanism on there. I did not have any AA batteries, so that was a little silly of me, but you get that on there and you put your hands on and it's ready to go. You literally, all you need is a couple of batteries. Easy squeezy. Except it's not always easy squeezy, you guys. I made this as a gift for a friend, and 5 minutes into her having it, I kid you not, ta-da! And thus we will make another. So follow me if you like ceramics, I guess.